I wish everyone buying a home on Lake Norman could watch this video. I'm Tiffany Weber, a real estate attorney in Mooresville, North Carolina, and I'm going to tell you 3 things today that if you're buying a home on Lake Norman that you should know. The first thing we're going to talk about is the 760 line. So the 760 line refers to the water level of Lake Norman when the lake is at full pond. So Duke controls the water level on Lake Norman. It can rise and fall in accordance with their needs. So 760 line is when they've got the water level as high as they are allowed to have it. So the 760 line, I've drawn a rudimentary lot here on my piece of paper, but the 760 line is not necessarily your lot line. So here in black, I drew the lot line. And that's basically your shoreline with Lake Norman is often where the lot line falls. Not always. The water doesn't necessarily always come up to where your property line ends or vice versa. It may come up, closer to where the end of your property ends. But there's the lot line in black there. And then in red, that's the 760 line. So that might be where, that's going to be where the water line is whenever the lake is full. So this matters because 1, it's not the same as where your lot ends, and 2, there are some guidelines about what you can do with your property based on where that 760 line is. Most importantly, there is a vegetative buffer in which you cannot build or disturb the vegetation within 50 feet of the 760 line. That's not your lot line. So that's the key thing is you might think, okay, 50 feet from the back of my property line, no problem. Well, what if, for example, the 760 line was not this far out as in our example? What if it was a little bit closer here? That means you have 50 feet from that 760 line before you can start building. Also means you cannot cut down any trees in this area. So basically everything we're looking at here is all a no-go zone. Can't put a pool, you can't build your house within that. All the trees, all the vegetation has to stay exactly as it is from that 760 line. So what you're really looking at is like, okay, what's my buildable area? Whatever your setbacks may be up to that buffer. So you might think, I'm buying this giant lot, but depending on where the 760 line is, you may not be able to use as much of the lot as you wanted to. So that is something very important to know. I also find, if clients that are wanting to buy on Lake Norman, if they have an agent that's not familiar with the area, they might miss some of this stuff. So they might not realize the difference in the 760 and the lot line. They might not know about the vegetative buffer, whatever it may be. So you find this beautiful large lot, not knowing that the 760 line interferes with your ability to build the house of the size that you want. Or maybe it's really important that you have a pool and now you're not going to be able to have one because you can't do anything in that green shaded area because of the buffer. If you are getting value from this video, please make sure to like and subscribe. It really helps us with the algorithm. We would greatly appreciate it. So that's one thing. The next thing that you need to know if you are buying a house on Lake Norman, or let's say you're buying a lot on Lake Norman, it's a newly subdivided lot and it does not have a dock yet, and you're like, great, I'm gonna put in a dock on my new lot on Lake Norman. What if you find out that the shoreline here is only 80 feet? That's a problem because the guidelines require that you have to have 100 feet of shoreline to be able to put in a dock. I specified that this would be for a newly created lot, and that's because, say the lot was created before the guidelines went into effect, there may be different standards. But for a lot that was created after the guidelines went into effect, then you would need 100 feet of shoreline to be able to put in a dock. You got 95, I'm sorry, you are out of luck. You got 80, I am sorry. It might be, the perfect lot in all other respects, but if you can't have a dock, that may affect whether you're willing to purchase the lot or not. Now, another thing about docks, new rudimentary drawing here. Pier projection lines. So if you want to say it's another newly created lot, doesn't have a dock, you want to put a dock in, there's this thing that Duke is going to look at, and it's your pier projection line. So if your pier needs to come off of your lot like this, oh my goodness, well, if you look at this drawing, like all of these other lots that are in that cove, Well, number 4, as you can see, is maybe gonna have to come out here. 2 is gonna come out here. It's going to be a little bit difficult to get a boat in, right? So it's talking about the pier projection line, like, which is, okay, what area is the pier going to have to go in? Where are the boats going to have to travel? So let's say you want to put in a lot. You're this lot number 3 here. And if you're going to put in a pier, it's going to interfere with lots number 2 and 4, or, you know, just one of them. Duke may say, and this is going to be in their discretion based on looking at the individual factors, all right, we will let you put in your dock here, even though the projection lines may interfere with one of those other lots, provided you get permission from that neighbor. So that neighbor is going to have to basically grant you like an easement into their pier projection area so that you can have your dock, which means they would be potentially giving up the ability to have a dock or to expand their dock. Say they already have a dock and it doesn't use all of the covered area that they're allowed to have, but in order to let you have your dock, they would never be able to expand their facility. Then they would have to give up the ability to do so. So that is another thing that you should know if you are buying a lot that doesn't have a dock, is look at those pier projection lines. Make sure that it's not going to be something that would require you to get the permission of your neighbor, because keep in mind, your neighbor does not have to grant that permission. There was one other thing I was going to say that it reminded me of. Oh, the covered area. Yeah, so this is a bonus one. This was not on my list today to talk about. Let's see, no, going rogue. All right, so bonus tip. The current guidelines say this is a new dock. You're allowed to have 1,000 square feet cover the water. So that would be, you know, your pier here, your slip, whatever it may be. So that would be allowed to be up to 1,000 square feet. So let's say you wanted to cover this. Well, whatever this square feet in here is now covered by your structure. So it's 1,000 square feet of water that you can cover. That would be like your steps, the cover, you know, jet ski ports, whatever it may be. So you might have these ideas for a grand dock that's, you know, giant. Remember, you only get 1,000 square feet of water that you can cover. So there's your extra bonus tip for things you need to know if you are buying a house on Lake Norman. All right, there are some tips about buying a house on Lake Norman. For some more tips, watch the video right here, or maybe right here, or wherever they put it. Thanks, guys. I'm Tiffany Weber, real estate attorney in Mooresville, North Carolina at Thomas & Weber. See you in the next video.